Hey everyone, I'm Harold and I'm visually impaired. Today's topic is going to be visually impaired people who are constantly answering questions and having to educate people when they meet them for the first time. The first thing I want to go over is, so this video is mainly going to be meant for people who are not visually impaired, because I do want you to understand that when you approach someone who has a visual impairment, there is a proper and improper way to ask a question. The thing is, we get asked questions a lot. I know I do. Sometimes it does get tiring. Usually I don't mind educating people. It just depends on the day. Sometimes it depends on my mood. There are a lot of times where I just don't want to. So the thing is, if you are not visually impaired, you want to approach someone, it is very improper to just assume you can just ask. The polite thing to do is ask them, just ask them in a polite way, hey, do you mind if I ask you a question? Do you mind if I ask you this? That there's nothing wrong with that, because if you're just curious, then it's okay to ask, just make sure you're doing it in a proper way. But if you just go and just blatantly ask someone like, hey man, why do you have trouble seeing? That's very impolite, that's improper, and that can be very offensive. And that can also get you a very bad reaction to someone. And if anyone sees me looking off camera, guys, I got my notes, I gotta go over here. It just helps me keep track of what I'm talking about because I don't want to be repetitive. So that's the first thing. The next thing I want to talk about is visually impaired people on the other side of this. It is okay to say no. Please understand, there is no pressure. Even if it feels like someone's pressuring you with questions, you are very much within your rights to say no. It's okay to be in a mood where you don't want to educate and answer questions. I know I have that a lot, and every now and then I will just say, hey, thank you for the question, if you don't mind. It's not a moment where I want to talk about it right now. I just kind of want to blend in. That's my whole thing. I don't like it sometimes if the very first thing they see is my vision impairment. Some people refer to it as a disability, and here's another pet peeve of mine. If you are not visually impaired, and it doesn't even go for someone who's just visually impaired, if you're talking to anybody with any type of disability, and as you follow this channel more, the more videos you see, the more uploads I make, I don't like the word disability. I call them a roadblock, and because disabled I don't like the word. It just seems like it's a nasty word. It makes me feel like if someone is called disabled, they are incapable of doing something. I am very confident that I'm able to accomplish just about anything as good as anyone else can, within reason, of course, but I just have to take a different route to do it. I call it a roadblock. I just have a different way to get there. We're both going for the same thing. The finish line is in the same spot. It's just our starting point is different. So keep that in mind. Don't refer to someone who has some sort of impairment as disabled. That can also come off as very offensive and rude, because it's not your place to just assume someone is disabled. The next thing I want to touch on is, as a person with a roadblock, in this example, I'm talking about someone like me being visually impaired. If you are the person asking a question, please understand it does get tiring for people like us. If we're constantly being asked questions, or if we're constantly having to educate someone, most of the time, someone with an impairment, most of the time we don't mind. We don't mind. We like to educate. That's why I've created this channel. That's why I'm putting this content out there, is to educate you. But my goal in this is to educate people from both sides. I'm here to educate someone who is not impaired and may not know how to navigate around someone they meet or someone they know. And also, this content is meant to educate people who are impaired. Maybe it can help you navigate through situations like this better, because I can tell you from personal experience, it's not always comfortable. It just depends on how the person approaches you. It's not always the most comfortable setting. And sometimes if you're a person who's not impaired and you want to ask me a question, if I decline to answer your questions, I'll do it in a very polite way. I'm not trying to be rude. There are just some times in a certain setting, I just want to be looked at like everyone else. I don't want to be looked at as my impairment. I don't want to be looked at as my roadblock. I just want to blend in like a chameleon. The long and short of it is I would just like to be looked at as quote unquote normal. I just want to be looked at as everyone else. But there are times when I'm in certain situations and certain settings that I kind of have the spotlight on me, and that's not always a comfortable place. No one wants to be the center of attention sometimes, especially being the center of attention for an impairment that you have. As for most of us going through things like this, living with this, it's your biggest insecurity. It is your biggest insecurity, and please understand, when you go out of your way to ask someone a question, just please understand that you also are, for some people, I'm not saying it's like this for everyone, but please note, for someone, you are also commenting and asking questions on their biggest insecurity. So that goes back to, there is a right way and a wrong way to do it, because you can be very offensive. You gotta approach someone nicely, approach someone respectfully. The next thing I'd like to go over is people with vision issues. Please don't get mad, even if you're in a mood or something like that. If someone approaches you in a polite and respectful manner and they have a question, please don't always get irritated if you're not in the mood for it. I get it. It does get old. Trust me, I've been there more times than I can count. You have to understand, from the point of view of most people who's asking you a question, whether you've known them for a little bit or you're meeting them for the first time, a majority of people out there are genuinely just curious, and they want to ask these questions just to be educated. So who knows, maybe they can better approach you or better accommodate you better, or maybe just know how to navigate around you easier. Most people, when they ask the questions, please understand that most of the time they have a good heart doing it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's jerks out there. I'm not saying there's people out there that just want to be offensive, because trust me, I've dealt with those people too. But a majority of the time, whether you feel like answering questions or you don't, just try to bear in mind, most of the time people are just genuinely curious, and they're asking either because they care or they just want to be educated about something they're not familiar with, which is very understandable, because no matter who you are out there, and I'm not just talking about visual impairments, roadblocks, I'm talking about anything in general. If there's something you don't understand, it is human nature to be curious. That just is what it is. Not, everyone, they don't always have, a negative underlying meaning. But again, it goes back to what I said before. Yes, there are some people who's just genuinely rude. But of course, you can point that out usually most of the time. And that's going to bring me to my next thing when it comes to people being rude. If you are meeting someone with a visual impairment, or if you know someone with a visual impairment, or just any type of roadblock at all, please know it's not okay to make dumb jokes. Even if you think it's lighthearted, it's not okay to do that. That's going to get you a bad reaction, or you're going to hurt someone's feelings, or that's very offensive. You wouldn't like it if someone made fun of you for your biggest insecurity. And I can tell you that for a fact. I've had people say things to me. One of my things is I have to look at my phone very closely. I've had people just say, "Hey, can you see?" You're not going to get a good reaction out of me. In fact, you're probably going to get a very rude reaction out of me. If you're rude to me, I have no issue being rude to you. I've had some people say, they'll think it's a lighthearted, stupid joke, like, "Hey, the blind guy over here understands." Don't call me that. That's not, that's very impolite. That's very rude. I've had people say that for the very first time meeting me. Or someone is saying something, let's say if they're showing something off, they're going to say they have a picture or something. Like, "Hey, I have this picture." and they're going to show it to everyone in the room. They was like, oh, don't worry, Harold, I know you can't see it. But for everyone else, just please know you might think it's a lighthearted joke, or you might just think, you're just giving them crap, it's cool. It's actually and again, here's my thing. I do want to preface this. It's different for everyone. You might have that funny banter with someone where they are comfortable enough with you taking jabs like that. If you guys make jabs like that to each other, then that's okay. But please understand, for the most part, most people who have some sort of a roadblock, they don't like even little casual jokes like that. Just because you might think it's not hurtful or offensive, or you might think it's just kind of funny, trust me, it's not. Most of the time you just come off looking like a jerk. And I tell you what I can do, what I've done, sometimes I will turn the tables on someone. I've had people say a joke about me, or even if it's not a joke, I've had people just genuinely try to be offensive and rude for no reason, to just want to poke fun. Well, I can tell you, most people that does that to you, most people turn out to be hypocrites, because they'll do something, they'll poke fun at me or make a joke. In return, I will turn around and make a jab at them, or I'll poke fun at their insecurity, but I've watched them get very angry about it. One thing I've learned about a lot of people in life, people don't like it when they treat you one way, but you do it back to them. They don't like being treated the way they treat you. Please bear that in mind. And especially if you're the person, if you come off as insensitive sometimes, or if you make a bad joke and the person gets offended by it, it takes no effort. It takes no amount of money to just say, I'm sorry, and apologize. That's it. For the most part, for me, I can tell you I'm a very easygoing, relaxed person. If you say something that can anger me or offend me, and I know you went out of your way to do it, most of the time, if you just apologize and just admit that you were being stupid and wrong, and admit that you're wrong, most of the time, I'm cool with you. Just don't do it twice. Just don't do it again. But if you're a person that, if you think it's okay just to make a joke like that to someone you've never met, just try to put yourself in their shoes. How angry would it make you if someone took your biggest insecurity and just pointed it out? Especially when they do it in front of everyone. Trust me, you wouldn't like it very much either. My goal for this channel is to teach people who are not visually impaired, and to teach people who are visually impaired, there are easy and respectful ways to go about communicating with each other. I guarantee a majority of things in this life, when it comes down to miscommunications, it's nothing more than misunderstandings. Even if someone comes off, let's say someone has a question and they make a comment about your vision that could come off sounding rude. As a visually impaired person, or anyone with any type of roadblock at all, one thing I'd like you to keep in mind, and I try to do this too, and it's not always easy, it's easier said than done. The person may not know how to navigate it properly either. If they come off as offensive, they may not have intended that. And usually, for the most part, you can kind of see through it. Most times people will say something and it's kind of open mouth, insert foot syndrome. I've been there, and I'm sure anyone else, who is a human being has done it. Anyone else has been there. You say something and you're just like, oh, I didn't mean that. God, it just came out just sounding so bad. So please bear that and keep that in mind too. There are people that may come off as offensive, but who genuinely, they don't mean to. So try not to always just go off on someone. If you're someone with a roadblock, try not to make it your first instinct to always go off of someone. If they say something that's genuinely offensive, instead of, let's say, lashing out at them, try and just ask them like, hey, when you said that, that kind of sounded very rude. Did you mean it in that way? Most of the time they'll just, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it came off that way. I didn't intend it like that, and I apologize. Most of the time, that's the way most scenarios are going to go. In me, when I was commenting earlier saying that I've went out of my way, I'll poke fun at someone. I only do that if I've expressed my feelings that it's not okay for you to make those kind of comments or jokes, and then they continue to do it. Please know, I just don't do it right off the bat. I just don't do it right away. I will give you a chance. I give you a fair shake. Who knows, I know that you may not have intended it that way. But once you make a joke or comment again, I'm very good at realizing, okay, you meant it that way. But for the most part, people are good and they don't mean it. They don't mean it like that. So my content that I'm putting out is trying to make things more common knowledge, and so there's not as many misunderstandings, because God knows I go through them a lot. I go through misunderstandings all the time. Things get lost in translation, so just please remember that. My goal is to spread love and positivity. All I really want in this world is for people to get along. Not saying it's going to happen. I know it's a far-fetched, goal, but there are people out there who are just genuinely good. Please remember that. So be kind to each other and don't go out of your way to be a jerk or be rude, because just understand everyone's going through something. Everyone is always going through something, and you never know what anyone's struggles are, even if you don't see it, even if they don't show it. You never know what someone's going through. So please just be kind to each other. It takes no effort at all. It takes more effort to be mean and rude. I can tell you that. Just be good to each other. And please like this video, subscribe to my channel, comment if you have any questions, if there's anything you'd like to say, or if you have any subjects you would like me to go over in my channel, in my content. Feel free to comment. I am open to absolutely anything. I don't care what it is, as long as it has something to do with visual impairment. You don't have to be visually impaired to want to know something. I am here to help everyone. So just be kind to each other, and I will see everyone next time. Love you all. Bye.